Hey everybody, Jeremy Hyatt here at Hyatt Training, week 9 of our top 10 tips for doing life better, and today we're talking about nutrition. So I'm not going to tell you what to eat or when to eat it, but we are going to talk about some questions to ask and some ways to implement strategies to make sure that your nutritional strategy fits your life and your body. Glad you're joining us. So with nutrition, I think the first thing that we have to do is have a plan. We talked a couple of weeks ago about doing food sensitivity testing, elimination diets, like kind of figuring out which foods are good for you and which foods are bad for you. And whether or not you have that information or not, it's really important to have a plan and not just think I'm gonna eat well, but really like write down a plan. We use a calendar to plan out all our meals. So for every day of the week, there's literally a menu. So you know what to shop for, you know what you're gonna eat, your timing is pretty much dialed in, the foods that you're gonna eat are dialed in, and when you have a plan, it leaves less things to chance, and when you leave less things to chance, you make fewer mistakes. So once you have a plan, the second thing that I think is really important is to take control of your own nutritional strategy. So Portland has great restaurants and food carts, but when you eat there a lot, you're giving them control. What I'm gonna say is you should plan and then prep most of your meals. By all means, there's great opportunities to take a night off from that. But when you prep your own food, you know exactly what's going into it. And when you take control of your diet, then generally you're gonna make better decisions. So we use a meal prep company called Stella's Kitchen right here in the neighborhood to do all of our lunches, 5 days a week for Lee and I. You're gonna put that investment in time or money into food prep, and that's okay, because the result is gonna be a really dialed in nutritional plan. And then we prep all of our meals at home from scratch. We use very little processed food. Most things are built from the ground up. We even grow a lot of our food in our garden, but we are able to take control of what goes into our bodies. You have a plan, you've taken control. Chances are, with any good nutritional plan, you're gonna restrict something. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Either you're gonna restrict your meal planning to certain times of the day. Time restricted eating sometimes gets called intermittent fasting, but it's a really easy way to plan out your meal strategy. You're either going to restrict something dietary, you're going to take out dairy or alcohol or processed foods, or you're going to restrict yourself from a caloric intake. You're going to eat less food. But any good nutritional strategy is probably going to implement one of those 3 restrictions at any one time. And if you're really trying to make big changes, you may need to implement 2 or 3 of those restrictions at the same time. But we're either gonna restrict our timing on our meals, we're either gonna restrict something from that dietary perspective, a type of food or a processed food, or we're gonna restrict our calorie intake. So be prepared when you wanna make changes that something's gonna have to be restricted. And lastly, don't be afraid to hit the reset button every once in a while. So there's different strategies for going through and kind of getting a good, fresh restart. Maybe it's a sober October, right? Where all of your friends band together and decide you're not gonna drink for a month. Maybe it's a Whole30 type of diet, or maybe in conjunction with some food testing, you're gonna do a really strict elimination diet. But if you can kind of clear that system and hit reset, and then as you start to add foods back in, you get a really good idea of what's working for you and what's working against you. But sometimes if we never hit that reset button, you just really kind of get used to how you feel and you don't notice that anything's really wrong until it might be too late. So don't be afraid to hit reset. There's a lot of different strategies to do that. Thanks for joining us for this talk about nutrition. Hopefully that gives you some strategies and some questions to ask as you kind of approach that element of your life. Next week, we're gonna wrap things up. We're gonna talk about education and then kind of put a little bow on the top 10 tips. So look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.